Hey everybody, Jane here, and we are going to start a new vlog. So, one type of romance that I haven't really read very much of is sports romance. So, I decided for this vlog, we are going to do several sports romances to see how I enjoy them. I'm not a particularly sporty person. The only sport I know much about at all is baseball. And even that, I would say, like, I went to some games as a kid. I'm not an expert. It's not something like I watch on TV. So we will see how I feel after trying some different sports romance and see if it's something that I enjoy. Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken. The first book we're going to read for this blog, or start anyway, I have an audio version of Pucking Around, and it is, I have no idea what it's about. A friend of mine recommended it, and it is going to be something I'm going to consume as an audiobook, but it is super, super long. It is 25 hours long, I believe, as an audiobook, and while that is awesome, I just hope that there's enough story and content to justify such a long romance. Romances that I read are typically 10 hours. I feel like that's pretty normal. So something that is like 20 plus hours is just crazy to me. So I hope there's enough content, but I'm excited to give it a try. So this is not really the way I wanted to start this vlog, but here we are. I ended up DNFing Pucking Around. And saying I DNF'd it might even be slightly incorrect because I didn't actually get to Pucking Around. I was still in the novella that precedes it. So I found out that the audiobook version I'd gotten from the library had both a prequel to Pucking Around and then it had Pucking Around itself. And I tried, guys. It didn't seem like I tried much, but I knew pretty quickly that it was not for me. So I didn't get very far. I'll be really clear. In the beginning, there was a couple things that I did like and I thought were cool. So our very first scene, we have a woman, I think her name's Rachel, and she's sitting in a bar and this guy is flirting with her and she is not interested. And this other guy, Jake, he comes up and he's like, "Sister, hi. Was this guy bothering you?" And he like pretends that's his sister to get the guy to leave her alone. And they start chatting and hitting it off, and they realize that they're both twins and they have some stuff in common. And then she's all like, "Hey, you want to have a one night stand?" And he's like, "Sure, what's your name?" She's like, "I ain't telling you, no identifying information, blah, blah, blah." We know where that's going, it's fine. But then, as things progressed after that, I just was starting to get the ick. There's a little bit of a scene, for instance, where she is in the elevator with him and she's all like, I really want him to choke me. And I was just like, nope, this is not going to work for me. This spice, well, I don't even know these characters yet. And it's already, man, he should be choking me in the elevator. And I was like, oh no. So I pushed a little further, but I didn't get past that first bedroom scene. I was like, it's given me too much ick. And like, I read some spicy stuff, but I'm very particular about my spicy stuff. And this was just, I was not feeling it. I was not feeling it at all. Additionally, and I think this also influenced my decision, I found out that Pucking Around is a why choose romance. So the girl isn't in love with like one guy, she's in love with, I think, 3. And that's not something I'm interested in right now in this context. I am open to reading reverse harem maybe later, but not for this, and especially if I'm really not enjoying the spice in the book. So we are not going to continue pucking around. It is going to head back to the library, and we are going to choose a different sports romance to try. Okay, so I have selected the next book we are going to read for this vlog, and that is Icebreaker. But it is not the Icebreaker that is popular on TikTok. This is a male-male romance icebreaker. Now, I do have the other Icebreaker on hold from my library, but at this time it's kind of a long ways out, so I am hoping to include it in this vlog, but it kind of depends on how long this vlog is by the time I actually get Icebreaker. But I did want to read like a couple popular of the sports romances. However, this one is also a sports romance, and it's also called Icebreaker, but it is not the popular TikTok one. So once I've gotten a little ways into it, I will update you on my thoughts. Hey y'all, wanted to give you an update on Icebreaker. So far it is about a guy, I think his name is Mickey James the Third, and he is the POV character of the story, and he is from a hockey family. So his dad and his granddad were making hockey legends or history or whatever you call it. They were kicking butt. And he is currently in college, and he got like drafted into this college hockey league. I know nothing about sports, but he's only expecting to be there for a year because he's going to go on to the National Hockey League. So he kind of doesn't care very much about college right now. He has 5 older sisters, all of who are athletes. They're like an extreme athletic family. Like his mom is an Olympian. One of his sisters is an Olympian. Several of his other sisters are sporty people. But he has a lot of like anxiety, depression happening. So a lot of mental health stuff, partly because I think being the pressure of this legacy, being the third, person in the family, the third man to do this hockey stuff and be a hockey legend. So he's in this new school. I think we're pretty close to the beginning of the year. And one of the guys on his team is a guy named Jason. And I'm a little bit confused with the names. I am listening to it on audiobook, and they're throwing a lot of names at me, but I'm pretty sure Jason is going to be the love interest. And Jason is not nearly as privileged as Mickey. And so, like, there is currently a lot of, like, tension. Like, they just had a confrontation. Jason was in Mickey's dorm room with a friend. They're all team members, and Jason and Mickey they call him James because it's his last name, so it's confusing, but Jason and Mickey have like a confrontation of, what are you majoring in? Well, nothing, because I'm going to the NHL. Why are you taking school so seriously? And the other guy's like, because I'm a minority, and there's not a lot of minorities that are drafted into the NHL, and, I need a backup plan. So I am enjoying the big picture stuff so far. I have a feeling it's going to be a hate to love, which is not my favorite romance. And I also am feeling like it's very YA. Like, we've got a lot of YA undertones. So I like, but don't love this so far. I do plan to continue. I'm not hating it, but I definitely am just kind of lukewarm about it so far. But that could change. We'll see. Hello, checking in. So I just finished at the dentist, and it is well past my bedtime. So if I look like crap, that's why. So I finished Icebreaker, and it was just okay. So I'm giving it a 3-star. I don't think it did anything terribly wrong. I think it just wasn't for me. I really liked the representation Throughout, it had great representation of members of the LGBTQIA community. One of our love interests is Black, and he has a lot of discussion about privilege with Mickey. And then also, Mickey has depression, and that's a huge, like, mental health problems are a huge plot point in this book. And so I appreciated all the representation. My issues, I think, were largely, I didn't care. I think part of it is just Mickey is very young. He's in college, but he's even a little bit written, I would say, younger than college, or at least my college experience. So I found him kind of frustrating at times because he was very young and a little bit immature. A lot of the problems that he has does stem from his family, and I just wasn't invested, which is probably more of a me problem. The only thing I can say beyond, this being written a little young. Oh, and by the way, there is no on-page spice in this book. The characters are intimate, and we're like told they've been intimate, but we do not see it. So if you are a reader looking to break into or a reader who really wants romance but wants it, fade to black type thing, this book could really work for you, especially if you're a younger reader and don't mind that these characters are in college, and that the problems they're having outside of like the depression stuff are very largely college related. Like, one of Mickey's big things that he's kind of debating is, do I stay in college and get a degree, or if I'm drafted to the National Hockey League, do I go ahead and accept that drafting? And he was just in college for the sports, really, but now he's debating if that's really what he wants to do. And then the other guy, his rival, Jason, is going to get his degree because he doesn't necessarily feel like he has a lot of opportunities ahead for a lifetime in professional sports. So, needless to say, like, I wasn't real invested in these conflicts. I had several times in the book where I was like, if I didn't finish this book, I'd be okay. Like, I did finish it because I had it on audio and I could put it on while I was doing other things, so it was fine. But I didn't love it. The big thing that the book did, though, that made me mad, and I do want to mention this, is there is a huge contention point in the book, or I don't want to say contention point, but there is a thing that is made to be really important in the book, and then in the epilogue, it's resolved, but it's not resolved in a way that worked for me. So I was kind of frustrated in the resolution because the resolution was kind of a non-resolution. And I was like, oh, okay. So we've been worried about this the whole time, and the author just couldn't decide how to play this. And so they were like, well, we'll lead you to this close to getting your answer, and then be like, it doesn't matter. And that is literally what happened in the epilogue, and I was so mad. But, yeah, so finished Icebreaker. The next read, ironically enough, is also Icebreaker, but it's the male-female one. So I had put that one on hold, and it was like a 13-week wait, but it came early. So that is going to be the next one we read. So once I get started on that, I will pop in and give you an update. Okay, I want to update you on Icebreaker. I am 15% through the audiobook so far. So Icebreaker, if you're not familiar, is about a girl named Anastasia, and she is an ice skater. She really wants to go to the Olympics, and she is going to fall in love with a guy named Nathan, who is on the he's the captain of the hockey team, and they are having to share ice because one of the hockey guys made a mistake that caused damage to the hockey team's ice. So now the hockey team and the skaters have to share space, and Anastasia and Nathan, their first encounter was kind of negative, actually. He told her a lie because he was protecting somebody else, and she got really hurt and offended by that, but he really likes her. And that's kind of like the basis of where it's at right now. So a couple things that I have to say about this so far. I'm fairly lukewarm in my feelings about this book. A big part of that, I think, is that it just is moving very slow. We're at 15%, and I just feel like we should be way further into this. This is a 13-hour audiobook, and I just haven't seen evidence that we're going to have enough plot for me to care for 13 hours about what's going on. So I definitely think this book probably is going to run a little bit longer than it should. Another issue I'm having is that there's just a lot of side characters, and I struggle with books that have a really large cast. So, and I do think maybe that's going to be an ongoing problem with sports romances, because you have a whole sports team with the main character, and especially for the authors who are, doing multiple books with the whole team falling in love, which is a great strategy for a series, it can just feel like a lot. And I know, like, I love Ice Planet Barbarians, which obviously you have a ton of characters, but most of them don't play a really important role unless, like, they'll pick like one or two side characters to play an important role with the couple, but like nobody else is super important. And this book, I don't know who's important, but it's just, there's a lot. So Stacy, I think, or Anastasia, who goes by Astasia, which is so confusing. She has two roommates, and I think one of those roommates is her skating partner. And her skating partner is kind of a jerk to her and is giving Nathan bad vibes, so I'm feeling like there's some stuff going to be happening with them. So aside from her skating partner and her other roommate, she also has a guy who she's been hooking up with. She's not in love with him, but she really likes him. And then we have Nathan, who is the captain of his team and has several different members of the team who are important. There is the guy who caused the skating rink issue. There is several roommates, one who is paraplegic maybe. And it's just a lot of side characters and a lot of stories and a lot of information that I'm not sure I want revealed when the couple is not even a couple yet, if that makes any sense. Like, it just feels like it's taken a really long time for this couple to start coupling. We're at 15%, and I think they've been together, as in like in the same scene, one time, maybe two. And it's just like, it's not a lot. And in my romance, I really want my couple to get together fairly quick, and that's not happening. Also, again, I think this reads very new adult, which is not always, I think, my favorite. So while these guys are in college, they're having a lot of like the partying things. Like, there's a lot of partying going on, which for me was not part of my college experience, and I just don't know how invested I am in the partying and the antics and the people making incredibly poor choices. Oh, and Nathan at the start of the book also was with somebody, but not in a just in a friends with benefits kind of way. And I honestly don't love that. Like, I don't mind when characters have people before the romance, but I just feel like them both starting off with another person for me is just not an ideal in a romance. So I'm having trouble getting invested in these characters and this relationship and the stuff that's happening. And also the book's moving a little slow for me. And also there's too many characters and side plots that are distracting from the romance that I want this book to be. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I'm not super invested in it yet. So we'll see what happens, but that's kind of my thoughts so far on Icebreaker. I wanted to give you a quick Icebreaker update. So I am right around the 22% mark. And I will say I was really debating whether I wanted to continue for a little bit because it was going kind of slow. But we did just have a really good scene. So if you've read Icebreaker, I just finished where Stacy had a little bit of an accident on the ice, or Anastasia. Her name is confusing to me because half the time they call her Stacia in the audiobook. So I'm really kind of struggling with her name. Like in my brain, it's Stacy, but like it's Anastasia and it's like Stacia. Anyway, Anastasia had a little accident on the ice, and there was a really good scene that I enjoyed, and I thought, okay, I think we're starting to get into the meat of this. As I've said, it's going kind of slow, and we were at the 22% mark, and I just hadn't been feeling invested. But right now I'm feeling invested, so I guess we'll see what happens from here. I want to keep seeing Anastasia and Nathan like interacting. And I think that's been one of my big challenges up to this point is I'm here for the romance, and there hasn't been a lot of couple interactions. It's been a lot of like setup. And I think for me, the setup was very drawn out. And also like, I don't like that both Anastasia and Nathan were previously like with other people. And actually there is a romantic interaction between Anastasia and Nathan. And then shortly after, like she's hanging with, but not being intimate with the guy that she was friends with benefits with. And that makes Nathan just a little bit jealous. And then he's all like, oh, never mind. I found out they're not, they're not really exclusive or whatever. And I'm old. I'm 40. And I'm fine with what people do in their real lives, actually. But like in a romance book, having them both having friends with benefits kind of just isn't, I don't love it. It's kind of not working well for me. And I guess, I think it's just personal preference / too old. And I get that, this is probably going to be a theme in sports books as well, that there's like puck bunnies and these guys are sought after. And that's probably part of the fantasy of it is, getting the guy who any girl wants. But for me, it's a little bit of an ick factor. I'm a little bit too old and a little bit too, exclusivity. So yeah, I wasn't enjoying the book. I'm hoping that things keep looking up because this last scene was really good. And I had been thinking, okay, I'm going to get to like 25% and then see if I'm still feeling it at all or if I'm not invested at all. But I'm starting to feel invested. So we're going to keep going and see how things turn out. I just hope we see a lot more of Anastasia and Nathan together and things improve, because I think this is a story that has some potential. I just need it to hurry up a little bit. So I had a bit of a mishap with Libby. And so I will not be finishing Icebreaker, but I was almost done with it, so I feel confident in giving you a rating and a review. So basically what happened was I had about 30 minutes left in the book, of the audiobook, and I hit pause, and it was time for it to be returned to the library or the Libby app. And it doesn't tell you on your Libby app like 2 hours, 5 hours, or anything like that. So I didn't know how long I had. It just was like, due in one day. And I guess I was cutting it too close. So I hit pause and then it returned it. But like I said, I only had about 30 minutes left in the audiobook. For people who've read the paperback or the Kindle edition, it was right at the time jump. There's a time jump that I assume is very near the end. It's like 6 months later, and that was where it ended. And so I think because I already got to that point, it was probably just more like an epilogue of where are they now? How did things turn out? Because all the important stuff had happened before that, I think. But regardless, I don't think anything that could have happened would have changed my rating or my general thoughts on the book. So let me give you those. I am going to be giving Icebreaker a 3-star. So let's start talking about the things that worked for me. Because the 3-star for me is kind of a book that I didn't hate, but I didn't love. And often a book that I think was average or maybe just not great, but not awful. And I'd say that is accurate to how I feel about Icebreaker. So, I love that Anastasia is adopted, and I love the discussion on adoption. I love the friend dynamics. I do overall feel like this book had kind of too big a cast, but I did love a lot of the side characters. I thought because the book is a little bit on the long side, there were times that they were well developed. I loved Anastasia's relationship with Lola. I loved Anastasia's relationship with the hockey team, particularly Henry. And so I really just enjoyed the side characters and the relationships and friendships within the group. I appreciated the discussion about athletes and nutrition. I appreciated the representation of healthy therapy sessions. And, I loved a lot of the plot points in the book, although I didn't always think the execution was quite where I wanted it to be. Like, I would have times where I was very, very invested in what was happening, but those times were kind of few and far between. So on the negatives, what I didn't like, I think one of my biggest problems with this book was just pacing. I was bored a lot. I found things were going very slow a lot. This book, I think, is way longer than it needs to be. The audiobook is about 13 hours, and honestly, I think we could have done with 10, maybe even like 8. I don't know if 8 would have been too short, but probably 10 because I want the character development and the friend things. But I didn't think the pacing was very well done, and I frequently was frustrated with the pacing and bored. This book has so many bedroom scenes, and they're bedroom scenes that I didn't think were very good, and I didn't think they added much to the book. So for me, I do read a lot of romance. I don't mind having bedroom scenes in books. Like, one of my favorite series is Ice Planet Barbarian. So, like, I'm a prude, but I ain't that much of a prude. But in this book, it just felt like they were constantly going at it to the point that it hindered the story. And the times they were going at it I didn't feel like it added to the story for the most part. It didn't give me plot. It didn't give me depth. It just was two people going at it. And I didn't think the scenes were very well done. I didn't think they were very, I wasn't fanning my face going, oh, doggy, which there's some books that I do. There's some books that have really good spice and they make you feel a certain way. And if you're gonna give me spice after spice after spice and it's not doing anything, it should make me feel a certain way. And it didn't make me feel a certain way. I also found some of the dialogue fairly cringy. Now, I don't know if that was dialogue as it was written or the narrator's acting. But especially some of the stuff Nathan says, I thought was very, very cringe. So I didn't love that. I also really didn't like that kind of throughout the book, these characters have an ongoing issue with jealousy. It Jealousy is just not my favorite thing anyway, and this was like the whole focus of the book in many ways. There was a lot of jealousy stuff, and so that is, I think, more of a me issue. I think if you're really into the jealousy thing, this could work a lot better for you than it did for me. But yeah, I think for me this book would have worked a lot better if it was shorter and if there was a lot less bedroom scenes and more focus on the plot and the characters and even the side characters, which is actually kind of disappointing because if this book had been more compact, I probably would go on to the next book because I know there's like a sequel and I assume it's with one of the other hockey guys and their new girlfriend. But I couldn't be invested in this enough to try to read another book that had the same, presumably the same issues, and I assume it would have. So I'm kind of bummed about that because had this been a hit, I would have had another book to read. I didn't hate this, which is good. I thought it was okay. And I would have finished it had Libby not returned it, but there's like a 6-week wait to get it back again. And I don't care enough to wait 6 weeks to finish it because by then I won't even remember what it's all about. And I only like was invested enough that I wanted to know what happened. But since we got through like the scenes that just happened, I was like, meh, okay. It's resolved enough for me. I'm good. So yeah, Icebreaker, done. I am not 100% sure what my next read will be for this vlog, but as soon as I know, I will let you guys know. Alright guys, quick update. I have chosen our next book. I am currently at my kids' doctor's office waiting for their appointment. So while I do that, I want to tell you the next read I'm going to be doing is the Bromance book club. This is, I believe, about a baseball star who is having some marital problems and starts reading romance books to get a second chance with his wife. So as soon as I get into it, I'll let you know. So I wanted to give you an update on the Bromance book club. I am really liking this so far. So this is about a guy named Gavin, and him and his wife are separated. They had a huge fight. They've been having some trouble. They haven't been married very long. I think they're at like 4 years of marriage, and he is just tore apart. He does not want things to go badly. He's got 2 little girls at home. He wants to save his marriage, but he doesn't really know how. And some of his friends from the baseball team, because he's a baseball star, have had similar problems and issues, and they have formed a bromance book club. And these guys are using romance novels to understand women better and to use their new knowledge about women to save their marriages. Gavin is super skeptical at first, but he is desperate to get his wife back and willing to give it a try. So he is like, yeah, I guess I'll do that. So far, he feels like it hasn't been super successful, but, you know, it seems like it's actually being quite successful when we see her POV. This is dual POV, which I was glad about. I was a little bit worried that it might not be, but it is. And I am having a great time. I love some of the discussion about like what romance is and what romance does for women. There was a discussion about like what things are explored in historical romance, which is my favorite genre. So I wanted to read you a couple lines that I thought were really good. Romance novels are primarily written by women for women, and they're entirely about how they want to be treated and what they want out of life and in a relationship. We read them to be more comfortable expressing ourselves and to look at things from their perspective. Yes, this is so true. You know, I think not enough men read romance novels, and if you really want to understand what women want in a relationship, like, a romance novel is literally women's fantasies. And then there's a whole discussion, as I said, about historical. And so here's what it says. They're talking about, I'll just read this a little bit. So you're saying I need to do what the guys in this book does. Good God, was he actually starting to listen to them? Not word for word, no. The point is to fit the lessons of it into your own marriage. Plus, that's a regency, so what's a regency? That means it's in the 18th or early 19th century England. Oh, great, that sounds relevant. That's Gavin's reply. It actually is, Malcolm said, that he's one of the friends that he's talking to. Modern romance novelists use the patriarchal society of old British aristocracy to explore the gender-based limitations placed on women today in both the professional and personal spheres. That shit is feminist as fuck. Yes. Like, I couldn't tell you why I loved romance novels, but I think that's, or like, historical romance, because that is my favorite subgenre of romance. And holy cow, yes, I think, especially as somebody who was raised in a very patriarchal religious order, I think that exploring the patriarchy through historical romance novels, like, I've never thought about it that way, but yes, that makes so much sense, and I loved it. So I am really enjoying this book so far. Some really great quotes, some really good things about it, and just in general having a fine time. So, yep, that's my thoughts so far. It is, I will say, also just a little bit of an emotional ride, this book, because as Thea, her name is Thea, the wife's name is Thea, as Thea is, like, dealing with how she feels about the divorce. Her parents are divorced, and she's, like, dealing with the issues that her and Gavin are having. It brought me back to some of my personal things that I went through as I was preparing to get a divorce myself, some of the discussions, some of the things that I wish my husband would have done to try to solve things, you know, things that men don't always think about doing. You know, I think as a woman, sometimes you get really tired of, you tell a man that these are the things that are wrong, and then he doesn't respond, doesn't fix them, doesn't solve them, or will tell you, I'm fine, so everything must be fine. And then by the time you are so done, they're like, you didn't even tell me anything was wrong. I've been telling you stuff's wrong for a year. I've asked you for counseling and you didn't take it seriously. I've been, you know, telling you I'm unhappy and telling you exactly what you need to do to help make this marriage work for me. And you refuse to do it, even though it's completely reasonable. And then you're like, I don't understand how you could dare divorce me. Because you don't want to work on the marriage. I've been asking to work on the marriage for a year. So, like, that is kind of her vibe, and I have lived that. So so far this book is hitting really close to home for me. I am really loving the discussion about what romance novels are for women, and then also it's helping me process a lot of my own feelings. It's helping me process a lot of my own feelings about what I went through with my divorce, and, you know, what it's like to be in a relationship that is falling apart. And, you know, especially when you have kids and when your concern is, you know, giving your kids a safe, healthy place to grow up. And, like, ideally you want a dad for your kids, but, you know, sometimes that's not always, being in the same house with that person who you made babies with is not always the right option. I will say too, the characters in this book have twin daughters, and so I think that even makes me relate to them more, because I also have twin daughters. So it it's just very, very relatable to me, and I'm really having a good time with it. I finished the Bromance book club. I loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. I do want to throw out the caveat that I think this book has a very specific audience, and that you will either really relate to it and it'll work for you, or it may not be your cup of tea. Like, I can absolutely understand some people this not working for. So some of the things I loved, but that not everybody probably will, is it was very, I think the word is meta. It is very self-aware of the romance genre, and that is a romance book in the romance genre, and it leans into that. It's kind of its shtick. And I think that might be too much for some readers. They might feel like this is kind of corny and cheesy. And I think sometimes it probably does pass into that realm, but I didn't care. I loved it, and I love romance novels. I think that this is probably more relatable to an older reader who has been in a long-term relationship. I'm not sure if somebody who's never really been in a relationship can understand the complexity that these characters are going through as they deal with, they didn't get to know each other as well as they should have before they got married, and then they had babies right away. And, the girl is feeling like she lost herself. She has been put in this role of wife and mother, and not just a wife, but a wife to a baseball star who has a very demanding career, and she's had to really take on a lot of responsibility and not had a lot of help, and had to really put her dreams aside and, make a lot of sacrifices. And I think sometimes she can come off as a little bit of a brat, but I very much understood where she was coming from and related to her, and so I was able to be very forgiving. I think Gavin sometimes also is kind of a jerk, particularly with his ego. So the thing that kind of begins this whole situation with him and Thea is they are having a romantic, intimate moment. And he realizes that things in that area of their life have not up to this point been as good as he thought they were for his wife. I'm trying to be vague here because A, YouTube, and B, I don't want to spoil things, but I still want to get the point across. So I think, so that causes a fight, and that fight gets way out of control. And you do have a lot of moments throughout the story where his ego kind of gets in the way of things, or causes him to react badly in situations. And I think that at times he's a little unlikable, although I think if you really understand him, it's forgivable. He's not just a terrible person. He is a person with big feelings reacting to those big feelings. So I don't think this book is going to be for everybody. There's a lot of tropes in it that I don't typically like, but that I did like in this, but may not be your thing. There's a book within a book, which in this case I loved. It's not something I normally love, but we are reading this one romance novel along with Gavin as he tries to learn how to love his wife, and the characters are from this Regency novel are having a lot of parallels to what him and his wife are going through. It's so ridiculous probably, but I loved it and it gave me all the feels, so I don't care. And I think that's the thing. What are you going in here for? But on the other hand, it wasn't just fluffy rom-com fun. It had a lot of serious discussions and serious moments and difficult things. And I think because I have lived experiences very similar to it, it spoke to me in just the right way. I don't necessarily know that everybody will find it a win, or that it'll speak to everybody the way it spoke to me. But, oh gosh, I loved it so much. But again, part of it was how relatable it was. Part of it was I love the romance genre, and I found it enduring the discussions about romance. And just overall, I think these characters were flawed and well-developed and very, very real. This feels in many ways much more realistic to me than some other romances I've read. And I think that may or may not work for everybody. Some people really would rather have things be a little more light and fluffy and rom-com-y, and this is not that, but this was very realistic in many ways, and I liked it. This book does get somewhat spicy near the end. It's not excessive, and I think it's very important that those scenes exist for solving plot-related things. So they did not bother me at all, but if you only read Sweet and Clean, this is not the book for you. But anyway, yes, I loved that book. And I think there's 2 more books I want to read for this vlog. But this vlog is also getting kind of long. So I will be back with you to tell you what the next read is. And we will go from there. It's cold. It's winter. It's cold. But I have picked my next read, and it is a wintry read. So I think this will mesh well with the overall atmosphere. When I'm recording this, it is mid-December, and this book is really giving me holiday winter vibes, and that is On Ice. See all the little snow? And granted, he's a hockey player, so I don't know if it's really a wintry book, but it's what I was feeling. So that is going to be my next read for this vlog. Sorry for the lights. I am actually on my way to work. I'm at the parking garage where I park for work. And I am taking this with me for my lunch break tonight. So once I get a little ways into it, I will tell you how I'm doing with it. Okay, so I am 50 pages into On Ice, so I can tell you what it's about. We have Elise, who has had something tragic happen. We don't know exactly what. I assume, but I'm not sure, the death of her parents. And she has decided to upend her entire life, and she takes on this job as the PR person for the Comet's hockey team. The Comets are in need of this PR person, at least partially because of a guy named Liam. Liam is one of their players who has been acting up and giving them a somewhat bad reputation. Liam has recently had some personal tragedy, either a few months ago or a year ago, because I'm a little unclear on the timeline of this. His fiance, who was pregnant with his child, was hit by a drunk driver, and she and the baby died. So Liam has been in deep mourning and is having a really hard time. So he's been misbehaving, and that is why they brought in Elise to kind of help be his handler and also help him deal with stuff and also keep the reputation of the Comets. Sadly, I will tell you, I am going to be DNFing this at 50 pages. This has just not quite been for me. I love the premise, but it's not quite working with the execution to my taste. So one of the things that really bothered me is that as soon as Liam sees Elise, he is all like, oh man, I haven't been attracted to any girl since my fiance. And all of a sudden he's all like, oh, she's really hot. And as soon as she sees him, she's like, oh, he's really hot. So it's all this insta-lust. And I feel like even at 50 pages, we're still very much in the insta-lust phase. We've had a couple attempts at trying to get to know them. They've been together and done some stuff that you would think would build to their relationship. but I'm not entirely buying it that they have anything other than lust in common. And I just am not big into the real lusty books. I know that can be common in sports romance. It's just not for me. Like, I just don't. I want to see a connection. I want to feel like you're really getting along. I want to feel that you're getting to know each other. And I want to feel like I'm getting to know you. That's another thing that's kind of bothering me, I think, is that Liam, we're told that he's been misbehaving so badly since his fiance died, but we really haven't seen much of that. We really haven't seen him misbehaving. There was like a couple little things, but not that I think would be worthy of like calling a PR person. Like, his last PR person quit. He was such a pain to work with. And I just don't see that. I don't feel like that's been shown as well as I would like it to. I do want to say Elise is a bigger girl, and I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate she's been described as curvy. I am a little bit concerned because she seems to have some eating issues. Like, I know he's always telling her to eat, and she'll be like, oh yeah, I ate at lunch yesterday. So I don't know if she's going to have something with that come up. So just be aware if you're sensitive to that, that could be something that comes up, but I'm not 100% sure. But I just, yeah, for me, the lust, especially when we're not entirely sure how long ago his girlfriend died, without much like development between them romantically, is just not hitting for me. And then I will say too, fairly early on, there's like a 2-month time jump, and I didn't enjoy that. It was very confusing. Like, you have her showing up, and then 2 months later you have like another thing, and it's just like, I don't care for that. I don't mind if we have a time jump, but I need a little bit of establishment first, maybe. I just don't feel like I'm vibing with these characters or vibing with the way their relationship is working. I think I would have liked something a little more sweet, more romantic, more getting to know each other, more connecting, and a lot less of just, oh, attraction. And again, I'm sure he's very hot, but he also just lost basically his fiance and his baby. And, you know, I don't even mind that he's like, oh, she's hot, but I do feel like it's a little early for that. Like, and he tells himself that. He's like, oh, you know, I'm still getting over my fiance. And it just, I loved the idea. And I think it could have worked, but it just isn't working for me the way this particular version of that is being done. So yeah, that's my thoughts. This one sadly is going to be a miss. And because I am aware that I'm not going to love it, I'm not going to take the time to finish it. But if this sounds like a book you could enjoy, and you don't mind the lustiness like early on, and, you know, feel free to pick it up. I don't think it's a bad book. I just think it's not working for me. Doing another before work check-in to let you know that the next book I'm going to try and hopefully read is Tripping for number 68. This is another hockey romance, and it is the last sports romance I plan to read for this vlog. I will tell you that as far as we are in this vlog, I kind of feel like what I'm learning is that maybe sports romance aren't really for me. Like, I absolutely loved the Bromance book club, but I didn't love it because of the sports. And the other books that I've read for this have either been DNFs or ones that I liked but didn't necessarily love. So while I don't think I can say I won't be picking up any more sports romances, I definitely feel like after doing this vlog, I realized that this is not a genre that I'm going to be like super drawn to and picking up every single one that exists. and that I'm going to be very picky about sports romances in the future. But I'm hoping that this one is a win. I don't think, even if it is a win, that it'll convert me and make me suddenly be like, oh, sports romance, gotta read them all. But I guess it could. But yes, so I'm going to start this tonight on my lunch break at work and go from there. I will check back with you when I've read a little bit, and we'll go from there. So I just finished taking a bath and reading more of my book. I am at about page 75, so maybe a third through it. And I wanted to give you an update of kind of how it's going. I like it, but I don't love it. So we have characters Veronica, who's called Ronnie, and Elliot, who is called Mox or Moxley, because that's his last name. So I may end up using those interchangeably. I will try not to, but like Mox is what stands out in my brain for the guy. So she is the PR person assigned to kind of fix his image. Now, he doesn't really have a bad image that he caused himself. He had a girlfriend who was mad at him during the breakup, I guess, and was trying to ruin him via social media, and that really hurt his image. And I guess when they were together, she was like largely into social media and posting everything about their life, and it was just a mess. So Ronnie has come in and she has been assigned to kind of fix his image, and she's working really hard on it. And so he is going to all of these events and doing different things, and Ronnie and him are having to hang out a lot because of this. I will say that I don't think the sports star and the PR person who is his keeper is a trope that is for me. I don't love that. And I think it's a fairly common trope in sports romance, and it's not for me. I do like Elliot. I think he's a really interesting character, although there are a lot of times in this book that I wish he would just talk to Veronica, and he doesn't do that the way he should. He would solve so many issues and problems if he would just say, oh, by the way, Veronica, here's the reason I'm doing this. Because here's the thing, he's not a bad guy. We as the reader in his POV know why he's doing the things he's doing that he's getting in trouble for, or that Ronnie's getting mad at him for. But she doesn't know. So, for instance, as they're have been really flirting back and forth, she catches him on a phone call calling a girl Princess Peach and talking all sweetly to her. And she's like, oh, hey, the next event, do you need me to get tickets for your girlfriend to come? And he's just like, I don't have a girlfriend. Instead of what he should have done, because he's like, why do you think that? She's like, well, I heard you call Princess Peach. He's like, I don't have a girlfriend. But instead of saying that, he should have just been like, hey, I was on the phone with my niece. Now, he doesn't tell her about the niece, and we're kind of told this because his niece has cancer, and he's supporting her, and he's concerned about her and protective of her. And I get all of the reasons that he is being that way. But to be like, hey, I have a niece, and that's who I was talking to, that can be the end of the conversation. You don't have to go on to her cancer diagnosis. You don't have to do any of that. You just say, oh, the girl I was on the phone with, that you're talking to her like you would talk to somebody you care about. Yeah, because she's my niece. End of story. There is kind of a similar situation shortly before that where he is in a bar, and there's pictures on social media of him in this bar. And it's the night before a playoff, and he's not being unruly or anything. He's just sitting there drinking. And she comes in and she's like, I saw that you were here. You need to go home because you shouldn't be here because, this is bad for your image. And what he doesn't tell her, but we as the reader know, is he is there because his friend is the proprietor of the bar, and he is trying to bring in some business for his friend. And he And, you know, he's kind of a main attraction because it's a sports themed bar and he's a sports player. He's a hockey player. And the guy who owns the bar was his old teammate. Now, the reason he gives us for not telling Veronica about that is because, well, you know, he doesn't want it to become an official thing where they have to get payment and draw up contracts. He's just doing a favor for a friend. And I mean, I kind of get that, but I just feel kind of frustrated with him not being more communicative. Other than that, I really like him. I love how much he cares about his niece. I love that all of the things that he's doing that seem bad are things that are not really bad. He just can't or chooses not to explain them to Ronnie, even though we know them. While I do like Elliot, I don't really like Veronica. I don't dislike her. I just feel like she's a very boring character. She seems to be a workaholic. And every now and then we'll get little tiny snippets in the story about who she is that are actually fun and great. Like, there's this one day she's like, I'm going to go home and watch Lucifer. I happen to like the show Lucifer too. So I was like, oh, this is great. But when Elliot's like, what do you do for fun? She's like, I work. I work, I babysit you. That's really it. And like, that is kind of her whole personality, more or less. I would like some more depth to her and more of a life for her outside of work and or maybe even inside of work. Like, why is she such a workaholic? I know she kind of has a friend at work, but I would like to see maybe more development on that. Just something to make her feel more real. Because right now she just feels like a woman who works way too much and goes home and watches TV. And frankly, Elliot seems like a lot more in-depth of a character, and I don't think Veronica's good enough for him. So that's kind of my opinion on that so far. I don't like her very much. I don't dislike her. I just think she's boring. And, you know, he flirts with her and teases her and stuff like that. He doesn't deserve boring. He deserves a nice, fun girl. The other thing that is not totally working for me has been the way their relationship is moving forward, I guess I would say. So I don't think it's bad. I just feel like I'm, as the reader, missing some steps of them developing feelings. It's not as maybe explicit in the emotional feelings part as I would like it to be. The characters just shared their first kiss, and it kind of, to me, felt like it came out of nowhere. There'd been a little bit of flirting and like a really nice conversation about we're friends, right? And you don't really hate me, right? And so, I mean, progress is being made, but still felt like I would have liked a little more relational development before we got to that first kiss, or maybe I'm hoping for a lot more now because, like, you can tell people are getting feelings, but it doesn't necessarily feel like those feelings are progressing. I don't love the way they're progressing, the arc of the relationship. I feel like we're almost missing steps along the way sometimes. And I'm not necessarily feeling them believably fall in love. But again, I don't dislike this. I'm having as good a time with it as I probably could based on these tropes and the fact that it is a hockey romance, which after this vlog, as I've said, I think I've realized is not my thing. And this trope of the social media and person and the sports person is definitely not my thing. So, yep, I just wanted to update you and let you know that is where we are on tripping for number 68. I will keep you posted. Well, this wasn't the update I thought I was going to be making, but here we are. I am going to go ahead and DNF this one too. I think what I've learned from this video is that sports romances are just not for me. I was having fun with this one, and then I stopped having fun. And I was trying to push through, hoping to get back the fun, and I just wasn't. So yeah, I think sports romance is just not a subgenre of romance that is right for me, and probably not something I'll be picking up in the future unless there are very, very specific tropes within it that are appealing to me. So I'm a little bit sad. I was hoping I would like sports romance a lot better than I did. But yeah, turns out this wasn't for me. We did have one big hit. I loved the Bromance book club, so that one was a win. And everything else just wasn't super for me. This has been Jane. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have other recommendations that are more like the Bromance book club, please leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.